Okay, great. So thank you. So hi everyone. My name is Sunga Lee. I'm the director of the Canada Climate Law Initiative, so CCLI. I'm very pleased to be here with you this morning and afternoon, wherever you are. Before we start, I wanted to acknowledge that CCLI is based at UBC in the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam people. I think it's very much important in our work to include and make sure that Indigenous rights holders are respected and elevated. So it's something that we try to do our best and to include also in our micro certificate. So unfortunately, Allison Schneider, who's the instructor of the course, is having some technical difficulties, but I appreciate that your time is very precious. So we will start the info session, but hopefully she will join later on. And if you have additional specific question for her, you can always touch base with us via email, and we'd be happy to answer your question. So maybe next slide, please. So yeah, today is the info session. This is the agenda, basically kind of quick introduction, the program highlights and expectation, the learning objective. We'll go over the curriculum, have Q&A. So if you have any question, please raise your hand and put your question in the chat. Q&A box, apologies, and then final remarks. So you see on the right-hand side, the two people who developed the content of the micro certificate. So Alison Schneider is the principal at Encompass ESG Corporation, and she is the former VP of Responsible Investment at AIMCO. She also wears different hats. She works with Ceres Investor Network, which is a coalition of investors advancing climate and sustainability related issues, both in the US and Canada. She also works with the Climate Engagement Canada that helps benchmarking Canadian companies against specific climate criteria to see how they are evolving with their climate action. And you have Gigi Da, who's an instructor of corporate responsibility and ethics at York University. She spent many years at CPA Canada advancing corporate governance and specific climate sustainability EDI issues. And also she was previously at the ICD as the VP Research and Policy. So these are the two people who really developed the content of the micro certificate. So very briefly, in terms of the program highlights and expectation, so the program is very flexible. It is 100% online. It is quite concise, meaning that you have one module per week over 8 weeks. Between the first 4 weeks and the second 4 weeks, you have a week of a break. And each week you can read the materials as you in your own time. Everything is online. And if you have additional questions to your instructor, there's a possibility on the learning management system to ask her a question. So we're really here to support you throughout the process and your learning journey. It is designed in a funnel style. We'll go later on kind of into the details of how we built the program, but it's really from painting a really big picture of the physical climate change, the social response, responsible investor response, and then really going into the role of director, the legal duties related to climate change, and then really going into specific and pragmatic approaches. So the focus, the content of is really focused on the Canadian context. However, although CCLI is focused on Canada, we have one co-PI, one co-principal investigator who is an American lawyer, and we also have a partner in the UK, so which gives us a good overview and sense of what's happening elsewhere. I hope you can hear me. It's a bit noisy where I am. And then you have a peer-to-peer learning experience where we have live session and office hour hosted by the instructor. One thing that is important to note is that the program is very accessible, although yes, kind of like the main benefit and advantage and value added to the program is very much focused and grounded in the legal expertise and our governance expertise. To climate related issues, you don't need to have any specific legal background. Even Allison is not a lawyer, she's an investment professional and sustainability professional, but it is anchored into our legal expertise. In terms of the fee, it is $3,300 for the whole program. And at the end, you'll receive a certificate from CCLI and Allied Law, and you'll receive LinkedIn badges. Next slide, please. So here are the learning objective. So you see, we kind of like divide the learning objective in 4 different buckets. You have governance, strategy, resilience, and evaluation. So we really wanted you to identify and understand the role of management and the board in addressing climate change, risk, and opportunities over time. This is very much key in terms of how we want to teach the student climate governance, very much focusing on the strategy and the long-term resilience of an organization. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty from an economic, political, and geopolitical perspective, but how can climate risk and opportunities can help you build the resilience and be ready to answer all these disruption and uncertainty? And how can you evaluate as a board the performance of your organization? So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the program is 100% online, and this, with the support of the instructor, you have live session for you to ask questions to the instructor, exchange with your peers, and also online through the LMS, you can ask a question as well. There's like a forum, and you can also ask a one-on-one question. So as I mentioned, the program is divided in 2 different courses. Each course has 4 weeks. It starts on January 26th and it ends on February 22nd. And then the second course starts on March 2nd and ends on March 29th. And the last module is a case study for you to review that will really kind of like put together everything that you learned throughout the 7 weeks into a case study, and you will have the time and the opportunity to discuss the case study with the instructor and the other participant. The platform that we use is called Canvas. It's a learning management system. It's fairly simple to use. You will need to create like some sort of like UBC quote unquote account, but we can assist you if you need support. And in terms of the assessment, the goal for us is really for you to learn and grow as a professional and really to better understand what is the role of the board and the legal duties when it's come to climate. But we do need to assess your learning. So the assessment, the grading, the overall grading is composed of quizzes, short quizzes at each module, participation during the live session, and a case study. And I know that I see that some people just joined. This presentation is recorded, so we'll put it on our YouTube channel if you want to review it. And at the end, of course, you can reach out to us if you have any question. And please use the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom to ask your question at the end. So in a nutshell, this is the curriculum overview. The course 1, as I mentioned at the beginning, it is very much designed in a funnel style. So the first one is really to set the stage around physical climate change and the transition risk, and why is it urgent to ask from a business perspective. Some of you may know some of the content in this, some of you might not know. So it's really to make sure that we're all starting from the same page. And then we'll go into the landscape, policy, and investment landscape. We'll talk about the climate change and the board of directors and really the oversight, so the role of corporate boards. And then in the second course, you'll see it's like once you understand this is what's happening in the science of climate change, the policy, the regulatory landscape, and investment landscape, and this is what are your legal duties. This is your role. And then how does that actually work together? How do you implement a climate strategy? We know that the board has oftentimes what we call like kind of like 2 distinct roles, which is one is more like focused on strategy and value creation, and the other one is more focused on compliance. So we'll go over your role as in terms of like implementing and guiding the climate strategy, scenario analysis. We're going to talk about metrics, targets. We're also going to talk about credible climate action plan, which is super important, as you may have climate related target, but how are you actually going to achieve these targets? And then what is your role as a corporate director. And then we're going to talk about climate reporting and disclosure, which is very much topical at the moment, despite all the uncertainty out there. And as I mentioned at the end, is a case studies that you'll have the chance to review and kind of like position yourself as if you would be an advisory committee member advising the board. So the next slide, please. So this is the perpetual cycle of governance. You have like 5 components, which is governance, risk, strategy, implementation, and evaluation. And oh, we have Allison Schneider, who is the instructor of the course. So hi, Allison.
Hello, everybody. My greatest apologies for being late. I had some major technical problems and have had to create several new Zoom accounts. Anyways, it's very nice to be here, and thank you for coming. I see there's 19 of you, and all from all over the place. We have students, we have professors, we have executives. So I just wanted to say thank you and apologies, Sonia Lee. Would you like me to continue from
Yeah,
here?
so maybe Allison, that's actually quite timely because we just kind of went over the curriculum, what are the objective and like key component of like more technical aspect of the program. And we're diving into how we thought about when we developed the content of this program. How do you think about climate governance? So if you, maybe I didn't introduce you, but if you want to share in 1 or 2 sentences who you are, and then kind of like take it over from here, and then I'll moderate the kind of like Q&A portion. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, so my own background, so I have been in the sustainable finance space for the last 15 years. I was head of responsible investment at Alberta Investment Management Corporation, which is one of the Maple institutional investors, and had the distinct honor and privilege of setting up the responsible investment program there. And I now work with CCLI in teaching this course, and also with Ceres Investor Network. I'm their Canadian representative, and I'm also a senior fellow with GRESB, which does sustainability benchmarking for infrastructure assets and funds. So when we first started thinking about putting this together, it just became very apparent that governance, this is the perpetual cycle of climate governance right here. Governance really drives how an organization responds to everything. And oftentimes a problem can be traced back to issues with governance. And so how would we look at climate change as systemic risk? How would we look at climate change within the context of governance? And from a ESG perspective, climate is one of the factors within environment, and social and governance. It's an E factor on the surface, but it is also a systemic risk, a transverse risk that actually hits all of the other risks within an organization. And so how do we think about that? And how should we proceed? So from a governance perspective, obviously the board has oversight over the organization. How should the board conduct themselves? What is the role of the board with respect to looking at climate governance or climate risk? And then how does this cascade throughout the organization? And then this is a cycle because it's actually also symbiotic, because as the organization becomes more aware and understands where climate risk actually resides, what the climate risk actually is, that will actually inform the strategy of the organization. And it'll also inform gaps and how to address gaps in everyday processes. And then that will again, hit evaluation and then come back to governance as well. So there's many different strategies with respect to climate change within an organization. It might be you're looking at, depending of course on the industry sector and what is most material to the industry. Many industries are looking at a strategy of mitigation. How do we reduce carbon emissions for our operations? Many are looking at adaptation, specifically from a physical climate risk perspective. And many are looking at long-term resilience. And so the traditional concepts of governance, you can basically reevaluate within the context of climate risk and other aspects of the organization, whether it's the legal team, whether it's the communications team, whether it's even HR, pretty much all the different departments within the organization can look at their function from a climate perspective, being embedded into what they do. Yeah, so this is the perpetual cycle of climate governance. And when we put together the curriculum, the idea was, thank you, just keep it on here. The idea was to basically mix it up so that it will be virtual, so that executives and people who are working can actually, instead of coming to an in-person class, they can actually do this virtually. So there's 8 modules altogether, 2 different courses. The first course is more looking at defining, from physical climate risk, transition risk, governance perspective, looking at the theory of what is climate risk. And then the second course is really more looking at how do we apply that, looking at things like scenario analysis, etc. What we've done is we have curated content. So we couldn't bring everybody in, but we have some experts in the field that we've curated content for you. And we have all these videos that you can log on to. So for example, Dr. Janice Serra, who is the founder of Canada Climate Law Initiative, co-investigator, I should say, we have an interview with Janice Serra, which is very, very fascinating. We actually split it into a couple different parts. We also have a webinar, an interview with Barbara Zvon, who is the CEO of the University Pension Plan, and she's definitely a leader on the climate file in Canada for sustainable finance. We have another interview with Stéphane Tardif, who is the managing director of the Climate Risk Division of the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. And of course, the OSFI B15 guideline, which applies to federally regulated financial institutions, is something that really Canada can feel very proud of. It's a wonderful guideline that other organizations, even those that are not federally regulated, can use to identify what they're doing from a climate risk perspective. We have the next slide, please. And then we also have Dr. Barnali Chowdhury, who is an expert on human rights, and specifically with respect to Indigenous relations. How do we look at that? So for example, right now we have in Canada, we have this new bill, Bill 5, which is looking at fast tracking projects across Canada. And what does that mean from an Indigenous rights and consultation perspective? And so we have a webinar with Dr. Chowdhury, and she's actually recently written on this topic of Bill 5. Dale Beaugen, who is the EVP of Canadian Climate Institute, not to be confused with Canada Climate Law Institute. Excuse me. But we have an interview with him as well. And one with Sheila Coleman from so you have a regulator's perspective, you have companies' perspective, you have academics' perspective, and Sheila comes from, she's the corporate secretary with London Gold. You have the corporate perspective. So you have many different perspectives as well.
I'll just
The
add,
other thing that's really
Allison, I'm
useful.
sorry. I'll just add for the participant interest, it's like these are just examples. We have way many more interviews that we have with experts from investor, from other corporate leader, corporate governance. We talk about biodiversity. So this is just like a short overview of the expert that we interview. And then this slide, actually, I will address that slide, which is the Stronger BC Future Skills program. So basically, for those of you who are BC resident, you may be eligible for that grant, and it basically covers 100% of the expense of our micro certificate. It is open to most a British Columbian resident, age over 19 years old, regardless of your financial needs. And so we encourage you to click on the link and go on the Stronger BC platform to actually register. So it is not, if you are a BC resident and you want to take this program, it is not through us that you will kind of register. So basically, you don't have to pay up the cost of the program. You'll just have to register on the Ministry of Education of BC, and then we'll funnel you to the program. So this is a great opportunity for those of you who are based in BC. So next slide, please. So this one, you've seen it, so maybe the other one, but these are just basically kind of like testimonial from folks who have taken the program. So here you have a lawyer who took the program and felt that she was better equipped to navigate the regulatory requirement. And then the other one is the CEO of a pension plan who took the program to really help him really address climate risk from the pension perspective, because although the program we're targeting both companies and pension funds, so regardless of where you're coming from. And then the next slide. Oh, so maybe this is a FAQ. We do have a FAQ. We can go over these questions. However, I see that we have 2 questions in the Q&A box. So maybe I'll start with the first one. Allison, are there specific disclosure standard and regulation the course will focus on?
Sorry, can you repeat? I'm just trying to grab it here.
Are there specific disclosure standard and regulation the course will focus on?
Specific disclosure standards, absolutely. So we are looking at the entire landscape. From a legal perspective, from a regulatory perspective, from a disclosure perspective, and so SASB, of course, Sustainable Accounting Standards Board, mapped out 77 industry sectors from a materiality perspective, for kind of sustainability perspective. That was back in 2012. Now SASB is incorporated into the International Sustainability Standards Board, and there are other frameworks as well that we look at. So depending on where a company is based from a jurisdictional perspective, it may have it may be bound to be reporting according to a certain framework. So we definitely look at that. So for example, in California, the SB 253 and 261 Senate bills, those require companies with over $1 billion in revenues or half $500 million in revenues to report on climate. And so, depending on, and regardless of where that company is actually headquartered. And so there's going to be repercussions depending on where a company is actually based. What was the other question?
Thanks, Allison. So actually this one I can take it. So someone asked, is there a summary available that outlines the course, benefit, and cost that we can share with our employers to demonstrate the benefit of this program? Yes, definitely. Please email us at the CCLI info email. We'd be happy to provide this. It's kind of like a 1 or 2 pager that you can use. I want to remind also the people, the participant, that you will receive at the end digital badges that you can add on LinkedIn, as well as like a digital certificate that you can have from CCLI at the Faculty of Law. Please, we may end this webinar a bit early, but if you have any other question, feel free to put it in the Q&A chat. One thing that I would like to remember for those of you, for those of you who may not be there at the beginning, is that you don't need to be a lawyer to take the program. Alice is not a lawyer, but it is very much grounded in our legal and governance expertise. Any other question or things that Allison you would like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add a few things, and that is just to say that I think the benefit of the program, now that I've taught it for several years, the benefit of the program is that it's very flexible. You can do it in your own time. There's a lot of material. So if you are, if you're a student of this, if you have a lot of time to dig in, there's many resources that are provided. We have quite a few case studies, and we have 5 live sessions. And during the live sessions, we have some group exercises. So it's actually an opportunity to network with people that you might not ordinarily have met, and you can solve problems together. And we have at the end of the session, we for the last few years, we have had a in-person networking event where people from previous cohorts all meet together. And so I think that's really beneficial as well, is the networking aspect. And also the fact that, the people taking the program are from various different industries, various different perspectives. That's actually very valuable. So you learn from each other as well. And I learn from you too. Uh, I, I do try to keep it current. So there is a lot that's happening. It's a very dynamic space. Pretty much every week or almost every day, there is something major happening in the sustainability space. Right now, of course, we have this anti-ESG movement happening in the States. And so there's implications there as well. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate reputational risk? How do you navigate liability? There are, over 230 or so lawsuits that were filed, climate-related lawsuits in the world last year. And looking at the trajectory of that. So it's actually very interesting, very dynamic, and very useful and timely. Uh,
And
Go ahead.
maybe if Allison, one of the few things is that, yeah, we do put a lot of effort in updating it. And the program is targeting senior business leader,
Yeah.
people who advise board as well. So like some of the folks that we have taught may not be like a C-suite level, but they do advise board on a regular basis. So that is very much relevant. So maybe there's two last question, and then it will answer. And then if you have additional question, feel free to email us. So what will be the official name of the digital badge and certificate that we will receive? It is basically the name of the program that you will have the micro certificate badge. I'm sorry, I'm losing my words. And then could you elaborate a bit on the opportunities to interact during the program session? Or is the focus on using the digital materials? How big would be a cohort in average? I'll let Allison answer that, but I will just
Yeah.
answer the last part of the question. So each cohort are between 10 and 25 people maximum. And why is that? Is because one, we know that we want to make sure that to create a space for senior business leader to interact together. And we found that if there are too many people, you don't get enough chances to interact with each other. And Allison's create like also group exercise and discussion that you go into subgroup, but we found that like 10 to 25 is it's a good number. But Allison, please add in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, sorry, what was the actual question again? Just repeat it one more time.
Um, wait, could you elaborate a bit on the opportunities to interact during the
And
program
to
session?
interact, right. Yeah. So again, pretty much, so there's 5 live sessions. And then during the live sessions, we have a portion of the live session is dedicated to exercises. So you'll be in a team and you'll be analyzing a particular situation. We use various different resources as well. So there's Climate Engagement Canada, that's quite useful. World Benchmarking Alliance. There's several platforms that offer information that's very dynamic, it's current, and we can use it in our exercises. So that's quite useful. The very last module is a case study. We've been using it on Total Energies, which is fascinating to see what they have been doing over the last few years. And then you work, so you'll work in teams there. You work in person, I'm sorry, by yourself, and then also within the context of a team. And so that's the very last session. Otherwise, there is some time dedicated in every one of the other live sessions. And then, of course, you have some quizzes and little assignments to do during the actual for each module as well, to advance from one module to another, which are not intended to be difficult or to trip you up. Anybody who does the course should be able to pass the course. So it's intended
Thank,
to, yeah.
thanks, Allison. So I think we don't have any more questions. However, we put in previously in the chat our email. So if you have follow-up question, please do email us. On the screen, you can see a promo code to get 10% off for the registration. And there's a QR code that will lead you directly to the registration page. So thank you everyone for taking the time to attend this info session, and we hope to see you in the winter of 2026. Thank you.
And Kath, I'll just say thank you very much, everybody. Apologies again for being late. And if you have questions, feel free to follow up. We would be very happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.